Namaste, welcome. I find the practice of metta really difficult sometimes because it's very easy for us to fall into kind of the rote practice. So if you ever found yourself kind of doing the phrases, may you be happy, may you know peace, may you be free from suffering, you know what that's like. So my standard phrase is that the practice of metta is like jazz. You have to keep finding ways to move from the cerebral intention around it to the embodied experience of it. So you have to keep changing and adapting. And again, we're offering different tools that can be helpful at different times. And just as I had mentioned yesterday, that when you're visited by unpleasant experiences, part of the practice is to notice and then to investigate if you feel called. And in that same way, when you have expansive experiences, or times when any of the Brahma Viharas is strongly present, where you can feel a sense of kindness toward yourself and others, or a sense of compassion toward yourself and others, or joy toward yourself and others, or you can feel that sense of equanimity, that kind of radiant expansiveness, the immeasurable qualities. It's tremendously helpful to really examine and investigate these states as well. These are the immeasurable states. When you really examine joy, you may find that there's no limit to it. It will take you beyond where the mind can even go. But the doorway, of course, is starting with the experience, the felt sense experience of it. And there are a few tricks here that I found to be very helpful when we really explore how we can open up our neuroplasticity. It's very helpful to really reflect when you have experiences of pleasant or wholesome or expansive states. You can explore first the embodied experience. Can you locate it on the inside? Can you sustain the duration of it? Can you look for the intensity in it? Can you reflect on its personal meaning for you? And these are some of the qualities that allow you to stream energy toward it and actually learn how to increase your capacity for these exalted states. So I wanted to lead really two reflections. The first one is a bit of a felt sense exploration on any one of these states, and I'll explain the second one later. So if you like, you can close your eyes. There are many doorways to these practices, but essentially you want to start where you have access. So you might take a few moments to reflect on someone or something that invokes for you an experience of the heart. It's always safe to start with a pet, or if there is a benefactor or an ally or an ancestor, or some place on this planet that fills you with a sense of presence and joy. And as you begin to settle on one particular portal here, it can be helpful to invoke any imagery that comes to mind. As you reflect on this object, do you see it as a still image, or do you see it as a moving image? A little trick from neuro-linguistic programming: if you turn up the color and the contrast a little bit, does that in some way enhance its aliveness for you? Some of us are not so visual, we're more auditory, and you might call on any auditory information that you associate with this object. Any sounds or words or tone of voice that you can recall. And can you call that in, amplify this? And now drawing your attention into the kinesthetic, into the felt sense, as you stream energy and awareness toward this object. Where does this begin to form on the inside? And you may find it helpful to bring your hand to where you feel it the most predominant. And you may find it helpful as well to deepen your breath a little bit, smooth out the breath. Is this felt sense a particular shape? Is there a color? Is there an emotional word that resonates with this feeling? If you could imagine the point of view or the perspective of this felt sense inside, is there a sense of how it wants you to be with it right now? If this feeling could get big, how big could it get? You might reflect on the meaning and the significance of this for you in your life right now. And let it know that you see it. Perhaps to let it know your intention to be with it. You might, in your own time, let your hands gently fall down to your lap. And again, note how intimately you can sense this moment just as it is. The quality of feeling, the quality of presence. If you like, you can gently deepen the breath and let your eyes open, or feel free to remain with your eyes closed. An element of our practice this week is developing our capacity for concentration and focus to sustain moment-to-moment attention on an object. There's a powerful way of willfully gathering your attention and developing a quality of presence that allows you to stay no matter what modifications of heart and mind come and go. Another element which you are cultivating this week is your capacity to observe without judgment. The sense of taking the seat of the witness, to be aware of all the details as they come and go. To see into that characteristic of anicca, of impermanence. And to see its relationship to dukkha, your capacity to let go where you're holding on. The Brahma Viharas point toward these immeasurable states, states without measure. And as well, in our practice, we are training our attention toward our capacity to rest in presence. And that quality of presence also has an immeasurable aspect to it. I'd like to lead a rather unconventional practice of paying attention and metta in a practice known as open focus. In open focus meditation, a little bit of background. There was a doctor by the name of Les Femi, who was one of the early biofeedback researchers. Was looking for different ways to invoke different brainwave states, which are associated with different subjective states of consciousness. So he was exploring different tools, and he just thought to himself, can I imagine the space between my eyes? And when he practiced that, and he was hooked up with a biofeedback device, he noticed he went right into the alpha state, which is a kind of a flow state. And so he developed this practice of doing a form of a body scan and sensing in the different parts of the body and sensing the space inside that part of the body. It can be a very powerful way of invoking a sense of presence. For some, it can also feel a little bit imbalancing. So if you find yourself during this practice getting really spacey or feeling a little bit disassociated or in any way feeling uncomfortable, you can open your eyes to kind of bring yourself back. And again, if it feels at all uncomfortable and it feels better for you to maybe stand or step outside, please take care of yourself. But in this particular approach, I'll be guiding you toward feeling or imagining space in the body, and we'll also be sensing space outside the body, but also be inviting you to allow a sense of metta into that space, to imagine a sense of metta flowing into that particular space. You might imagine that sense of metta as kindness or compassion or joy. You might imagine it as a quality of warmth or a quality of light. You'll kind of find your own way in this practice. So if you like, you can close your eyes. I'll be asking a series of questions over the course of this practice. And you'll have about 15 seconds to notice where the inquiry takes you. Can you feel or imagine the space between your forehead and the back of your head? Can you feel or imagine the space between your eyes? Is it possible to feel or imagine the space inside the sinus cavities in your head? Can you imagine the space inside your mouth? Can you imagine this perception of space as effortless? And can you feel or imagine the space inside your ears? Is it possible to feel or imagine the volume of your lips? Can you feel or imagine the space or the volume inside your tongue? Is it possible to feel or imagine the space inside your throat? And can you imagine the space or the volume of your head and throat suffused with a sense of metta? Can you feel or imagine the space inside your lungs? Is it possible to feel or imagine the weight of your right shoulder and shoulder blade? Can you feel or imagine the weight or the volume of your left shoulder and shoulder blade? And can you feel or imagine the weight or the volume or the length of your right arm? Can you feel or imagine the volume or the space, the length of your left arm? Is it possible to feel or imagine the space inside your right thumb? Can you feel or imagine the space inside your left thumb? Can you feel or imagine the space between your right thumb and your right forefinger? Can you feel or imagine the space between your left thumb and left forefinger? Can you feel or imagine the space between each of the fingers on the right hand? Can you feel or imagine the space between each of the fingers on the left hand? Can you feel or imagine the space inside the right thumb, right palm, and right fingers? Can you feel or imagine the space inside the left thumb, the left palm, and left fingers? Can you imagine the perception of space as effortless? Can you imagine the shoulders and shoulder blades, the arms, thumbs, hands, and fingers suffused with a sense of metta? Can you feel or imagine the space between your breastbone and your spine? Can you feel or imagine the space between your navel and your spine? Is it possible to feel or imagine the space between your navel and the base of your pubic bone? Is it possible to feel or imagine the space between the base of the pubic bone and the tip of the coccyx, the tip of the tailbone? Can you feel or imagine the space between the left hip joint and the right hip joint? Can you imagine the space in the torso and belly and down to the floor of the pelvis filled with a sense of metta? And can you feel or imagine the space and the volume and the length of the right leg? Can you feel or imagine the space, the volume, the length of the left leg? Can you imagine or feel the space inside the right foot and toes? Can you feel or imagine the space inside the left foot and toes? Can you imagine the legs, feet, and toes filled with a sense of a metta? Is it possible to feel or imagine the space inside the left thumb while simultaneously feeling or imagining the space inside the right thumb? Can you imagine the perception of space as effortless? Is it possible to feel or imagine the space between the navel and the spine while simultaneously feeling or imagining the space between the forehead and the back of the head? Can you feel or imagine the space in front of your body extending out beyond the furthest star? Can you feel or imagine the space behind your body extending beyond the furthest star? Can you feel or imagine the space to the left of your body extending beyond the furthest star? Can you feel or imagine the space to the right of your body, extending out beyond the furthest star? Can you feel or imagine the space above your body, extending out beyond the furthest star? Can you feel or imagine the space beneath your body, extending out beyond the furthest star? Can you imagine the perception of space as effortless? Can you feel or imagine the space inside your body? Can you feel or imagine the space outside your body? Can you feel or imagine the space inside your body and the space outside your body as one continuous space? Can you imagine the space inside your body and the space outside your body suffused and filled with a sense of metta? Continue now in your own practice, resting in the sense of space. And the space filled with a sense of metta. Namaste.